Hey guys, what's going on? How you doing? Jesus loves you. So this is a quick review for Friday the 13th, the original. Biff is behind me, Back to the Future. That's a classic. Right, so I'd never actually seen this movie. This is my first time actually seeing it. I had thought I seen it. I'm a huge horror fan. Obviously Friday the 13th is known as one of the original, that started the whole horror thing, right? All the horror rules that we know of, that we learned about in the Scream, right? In the first Scream, a lot of them got established in this is one of the movies, right? And it's known as one of the biggest slasher films. Kind of started the whole slasher theme. Actually, Black Christmas was the very first slasher, right? And we know we got Jason, we got Freddy, right? We got Michael Myers. It's the unholy trinity that we got in the horror genre. So I was pleasantly surprised, right? It exceeded my expectations, right? I thought it was just kind of a campy, stupid, horny teenagers in the woods, the the unmoral people all get killed, and not much. I knew there was some plot line about the son drowning at the lake, right? But it was wild because Jason wasn't the killer in the whole movie. The mom was the killer. So I found out that the guy who wrote it and I believe did the screenplay, he might have directed it. He was upset with the franchise after that, right? Because there's a bunch of movies after, and the franchise went on to make millions of dollars. But he was upset that Jason became the killer, and he wanted to get the rights and destroy the film or whatever, the future films he wanted, because he wanted to have copyright. So he got taken to court, everything like that. I think he lost. But it's pretty wild because we all know the film, and it's almost like we forget the film is named Friday the 13th. We think it's basically called Jason. He didn't even wear the hockey mask, right? So this Jason figure appears as sort of a supernatural killer, right? But in the original, he was sort of a figment of the imagination of the final girl. Final girl is an idea in horror, a theme that we keep seeing, right? That there's one survivor. Now in this movie, you kind of thought everybody was going to die, but you do have a final girl. It was kind of hard to figure out who the final girl was in this movie, which was really cool to me. In most newer horror movies, you can tell who the final girl is by the way they film it and they zoom in, her personality, right? She's usually the more moral one. Sometimes she's actually Christian, right? And so horror movies have always been intricately interwoven with Christianity, believe it or not. People don't realize that. They think it's all satanic. Actually, no, it's the opposite, right? The bad guys are always the bad guys. They always lose. Even if they survive, eventually they lose. And morally, they are seen as the enemy, right? And every kind of, quote, normal person, there's some dark side of us that kind of relates to the killers, especially if you know the background. But mainly, you want the good people to win, right? And you're the weird one if you are kind of siding with the killer. Although that does mess with our psyche, because sometimes we do. Now, the movie had Kevin Bacon in it, which I didn't even know. He shows up, you're like, wow. It takes you a few minutes, and you're like, that's Kevin Bacon. He's super young, right? And he dies quick, which is another surprise. So the movie was full of, awesome surprises. The last, second to last scene of the movie, if you guys have seen it, right, was a total surprise. Now, if you know and you've seen clips of it, you might know that that's going to happen. But I didn't really know. Because the way they use the music, the way it's filmed is beautiful. And in the second to last scene, you think everything is final and everything's good. And then, little Jason comes out of the water with, moss on him and just deformed and weird and takes her down, right? Because they're playing this really nice music. She's out on the lake. Everybody's dead. She's killed the killer. She's killed the mother. The cops are there. Everything's going to be safe. And the music is luring you into that delusion, that false safety. And boom, he comes out and takes her out, right? And then you still don't know, plot-wise, was it a figment of her imagination? Because she wakes up in the hospital in the last scene, and the cop says, we dragged you out of the water. And she says, where's the boy? What boy? We didn't see a boy. The guy who dragged me into the water, right? So that really sets it up for the franchise. Now, I am a huge film fan, right? And a lot of this started for me in a class that I took called Film Studies. My senior year of high school, I took a film studies class, which was my favorite class ever. I also took a class called Conscience of Man, which was about racism, the Holocaust, etc. And that was another favorite class of mine. But film studies was amazing, right? And we watched The Graduate, we watched Citizen Kane, and what we did and we learned to do in the class was to study film. Not to just watch it as entertainment, but to study it. You're studying every shot. You're studying the plot line. You're studying the way they're using music, the way they're using characters, character of development. There's so much that goes into movies. There are documentaries made about movies. There are books written about movies, right? So I'm watching this film as a film studier. That's what I've been doing. I've studied film for a long time. When Quentin Tarantino came on the scene, I studied all his films. That's how he became a director, right? He just studied film. He just watched film and studied it. Picked up a camera and became this awesome guy. I believe he didn't even go to school for film. That's kind of my story. I went to school for audio recording, music. I didn't study film, but I was studying film, right? I used to get films from the library, black and white films, old school films, foreign films, art films, avant-garde ones. All my films had captions, when I was like in college studying film. I remember watching it on the big screen TV and my sister's coming out like, "You're so weird, dude. Why are you watching these weird movies alone?" And it's like, I got a notepad and I'm studying, right? So I made a short film called Too Fresh in college. And basically, it was my senior year of college and I just picked up the film equipment that was there in the school. My friends worked there and they allowed me to use the equipment. And I made my own movie, right? I wrote it, directed it, filmed it myself, edited it myself, casted it, everything, right? And I was working on a second film, which was a horror film, when I moved to Brooklyn in Bay Ridge. And I started filming, but I was never able to finish the film. That's a big dream of mine, is to continue to make films in heaven, right? I believe in the new heaven and new earth. We'll have movie theaters just like this. Beautiful, beautiful, absolutely wonderful theaters, but even better, right? So that's my dream, is to make movies about Jesus and Revelation and the Antichrist and stuff like that. So, back to this movie, super good. Again, I'm learning from some books I'm reading about the history of horror, that horror is intricately connected to feminism. Okay, so we saw that in the movie. A lot of times what you see with the female characters is they're intuitive, right? They know what's going to happen. One lady in this movie had a dream about her own death, essentially. It was symbolic, but she called it the shower dream, where it was raining blood. And it was scary, and it was getting louder, and it became a river of blood. Okay, well, she gets an axe in her head. So that dream didn't help her too much, but she did have the intuition that it was something real. But Kevin Bacon's character, who was her boyfriend, or boy toy, however you want to see it, he told her, it's just a dream, right? And Kevin Bacon was one of the first to die, so that was really awesome. So you see feminist ideas in the movie for sure. The final girl is an idea in horror where the girl is the smart one who outsmarts the killer and survives. The final girl always has to be smart, and she's always moral. The super, quote unquote, immoral girls who are not smart, they don't make it, right? So this is a theme in horror. Now you could argue that that's actually a a male way of thinking, a chauvinist way of thinking rather. But there is an idea that it's also feminist, right? Horror movies are very female. They're also very male, okay? The killers are often male. There's male angst, right? There's hatred of women, yes. But there's also females that are showcased, their talents. They reign victorious. It shows their smarts, right? It also shows their beauty. There are so many things going on, right? Now, I want to talk about this. As I said, horror is intricately connected and interwoven with the Bible and biblical topics in Christianity. Did you know that? Now, I Googled, check this out, guys. This is super interesting. We know Friday the 13th is a thing. Everybody knows that it's like an unlucky day, an unholy day. So I Googled, did Friday the 13th, the movie, start that conception, or did it happen first? So what I learned is, so check this out. The superstition surrounding Friday the 13th predates the 1980 movie, which mentions of the date being associated with misfortune appearing as early as 19th century France. Therefore, Friday the 13th is, as a thing, existed before the movie. The film simply using an existing superstition as its basis. Now check this out. It started in biblical times. The idea of Friday the 13th being a unlucky thing, unholy thing, started in the Bible. Okay, check it out. The superstition around Friday the 13th being unlucky or unholy is strongly connected to the Last Supper. Who knew? Which is believed to have 13 guests including Judas, the betrayer of Jesus. The idea is that the pairing of the number 13 with the betrayal that occurred during the Last Supper, which also fell on a Friday, created a potent combination for the superstition. Number 13, Judas Iscariot is believed to be the 13th person to sit down at the Last Supper table. In other words, you had 12. Everybody knows 12 is a good number. There's a lot of good things connected to 12. It's often used. But when the 13th member, being Judas Iscariot, showed up, it was unlucky for our Lord Jesus Christ. So just like the entire calendar is based on the man Jesus Christ, right? BC, before Christ, AD, a lot of people think it means after death, but it actually means like Adonium or something, which basically means after death in Latin, right? So, and now you see that Friday the 13th, the movie, the superstition, this stuff's been going on for thousands of years, has to do with the Last Supper and Jesus Christ. So we see that horror movies are intricately interwoven with Christianity, the Bible, Jesus, the devil, who is also connected to Jesus, right? The adversary, so to speak, of Jesus Christ and God the Father, and also with feminism. There is a lot to learn about horror movies, a lot to learn in general about filmmaking, about storytelling, right? Filmmaking is simply storytelling on film. So I absolutely love this movie. I love slasher films. I've been getting into them recently, watching the old 80s and 70s ones. Black Christmas is one of the best slasher films ever. It's the original. Technically, actually, I think Psycho is considered the original. But also what you see with horror movies, which I love, is it shows mental illness and it shows trauma and how it affects people, okay? Essentially, most people think that Friday the 13th is just about a bunch of teenagers getting naked and doing what they do in the woods,